Welcome to Independent Sources. I'm Abi Ishola. Somebody, anybody, sing a black girl song, a song about caring, struggle, hard times. Those words from Ntozake Shange's 1975 play for colored girls about the experience of black girls in our society. That song would sound pretty much the same today, more than 30 years later. On this edition of Independent Sources, we look at a recently released study about black girls in New York. It reveals lives of hardship, but also of hope. We explore reports of an Indian exodus. Is there a reverse brain drain? And we profile Aramica, a newspaper providing coverage for the Arab American community. But first, life for black girls in New York City. The U.S. Census reports that the rate of poverty among black children is nearly triple that of Asian American and white children. A recent study titled Black Girls in New York City, Untold Strength and Resilience reveals that the effects of poverty are especially severe in the lives of black girls. With us today is Angela Hollis, co-founder of the Black Women for Black Girls Giving Circle, the organization that funded the study. Also, here's Michaela Angela Davis. She is creative consultant for Black Entertainment Networks and board member of Black Girls Rock, Inc., a youth mentoring organization. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Angela, we'll start with you.
Okay.
Based on the study, how is poverty harder on black girls?
Oh my goodness. Well, you know, having come out of a socioeconomic situation where low income, you have parents who are working more than one job. You have an educational system oftentimes in impoverished communities that are not as desirable as you will find in some other urban communities as well as suburban. So you have a situation for where poverty has basically truncated some of the benefits and privileges that other communities have because of the income levels in their households. Parents, maybe a parent at home and one in the workplace, whereas with our girls in impoverished neighborhoods, that's not the case. So you see it working out both in their education, because the schools are oftentimes deficient. You see health disparities and deficiencies that occur because you just don't have access to the same kind of medical treatment that you would in other communities. And I would also say that the safety is a key issue in impoverished neighborhoods. You know that crime tends to be higher in some of those neighborhoods, in some of our neighborhoods. So you have all of those factors playing on in the lives of black girls, and as a result, they take on different roles.
Okay, well, speaking of other neighborhoods, I'll
Yes.
stop you there.
Okay.
I recently spoke to a few girls at the Youth Empowerment Mission in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. They spoke candidly about some of the issues they face. Let's take a look. Do you ever feel afraid in the neighborhood you live in?
It's dangerous because it's like people will start shooting in like daylight. No, they don't care, and there's always cops around. So and people just look at young girls like it's all right, like to holler at them, and that's not cool.
What kind of responsibilities do you guys have at home? Do you ever feel overwhelmed?
Babysitting, dishes, my room, the bathroom. My mother got 2 jobs, so it's like that's even more work for me. So
I have to watch my sister pick her up from school, help my mother out.
So do you guys get stressed out when your moms get stressed out about bills?
yeah.
Because I sometimes want to sit there and talk to her, and it's like, okay, I
And then
get
she be
it,
like, and then
hello.
she get frustrated.
Yeah.
When the bills is backed up, I hate that because it stresses her out.
Sometimes it depends, because sometimes my mother, she don't want to be bothered, especially when it's about me. Yeah, I
Yeah,
wait
like
till she cool down and be like, yeah.
Say if
Mom,
we got
so-
school pictures or something, or I need money for a trip to go on, or Blossom is about to go somewhere and you want a little change in your pocket, and then she be like, I just gave you $5 this month. Yeah.
That's like me.
Just so you know, those girls were from the ages of 13 to 16. Michaela, what do you think about their responses?
First of all, you see how articulate they are and how aware of their circumstances they are, and how they're straddling this world of being just girls, and then being like adults. And you know what you were saying, poverty is really stressful emotionally and spiritually. And so these girls, aside from the daily things of picking people up and cooking dinner and managing their mother's emotional being, is it's a burden that girls should not have to have, and it works itself out in depression, in overeating, and you see all these manifestations of poverty that eat away at natural development. You know, at things where girls, when they're just creating and having fun and inventing themselves, as your study says, that gets molested by these social economic situations, so they never really get to the business of just being a girl. You know, and so, and then then they manage that their entire lives. You know.
So what is the Black Women's Circle planning on doing, or what should the community do, I should say?
Well, pointedly, our researcher and the author of the report, Dr. Avis Jones DeWeaver, has pointed out mentoring is a huge, we were talking earlier, you know, we all know that mentoring happens to be one of the most effective interventions, you know, for healthy development. So mentoring one-on-one programs is a recommendation. Now, the Giving Circle, we are a collective of women, very, you know, all of us provide funds and funding for the work. So we're now trying to work out, how do we take these recommendations and implement them? So we are looking at mentoring, but not in necessarily recreating a new program, but possibly partnering with some existing programs and working out maybe a smaller one-on-one group. So that's one thing. We're also, our major focus right now is to do what we're doing today, which is disseminating this information broadly, widely, deeply.
The study.
The study, absolutely. So we have our website where people can go to and download the full report. We have
What's the website? Sorry.
Our website is www.blackwomenforblackgirls.org.
Okay.
We also are holding additional forums. We released the report at the Schomburg Research Center for Black Culture earlier and as a part of Women's History Celebration. And so we did that, and we had lots of women there who were interested in holding forums. And so we plan to do that as well. There's the whole faith-based community, and you may remember one of the recommendations is that, you know, some of the girls who had a strong spirituality or religiosity fared better. You know?
And actually, not everything in the study was negative. They found that Black girls tend to like their bodies more so than their white counterparts. What do you think about that, Michaela?
Well, I want to respond to you because the good news is mentoring is easy, meaning just go get a girl. I mean, there's some things where you can join an organization, and there's lots of them. There's, you know, National Cares Mentoring. There's all kinds of organizations that you can join. However, what I like about this as a solution, it's not so overwhelming, like we have to go fix the school system and we have to go, you know, lobby on Washington. All that needs to be done. And there are people that we have elected to do that, and we should put pressure on them to do that because our school systems are abominable. I mean, they're a national disgrace. However, getting into the lives of a young girl is easy. Everyone who's not crazy should do it. No, you know what I mean? Because we need to feel stable in order to give.
That's right.
However, if you are feeling stable, you can just go get a girl.
How do you feel about how Black girls are portrayed in the media?
Well, I've said this a few times. I'm like, whoever has been doing PR for Black girls needs to be fired. But interestingly enough, in these last couple of months, it's changed. You know, with Michelle and those two little girls. So the most popular women in the world right now are arguably two Black women, Oprah and Michelle. That's a completely new paradigm. We see two little Black girls skipping off to a private school. You know, my mother sent me this picture of the little girl in Arkansas, surrounded by Secret Service, so she wouldn't be killed going into school. Next to a picture of Malia and Sasha, surrounded by Secret Service, going into this private school, and that this happened in her lifetime. So we have that to look to. howsoever, there's a lot of work to be done. Just because the violence seems to have slowed down and not so much stopped, but it's slowed down. Now we have to deal with the wreckage of now it's time for us to recover. So I feel like there's a lot of work to be done for those of us who are privileged, for those of us who are safe, for those of us who are educated, to go get our girls, because many of our neighborhoods and communities were left unattended. I mean, completely devastated. And so now we get to look at it because we're not so stressed out because of what's happening politically. Like, we have been activated by this moment in history that, you know, the shoe hasn't dropped. He actually got elected. Like, it happened, and we're here. And Michelle's, you know, having tea with the Queen. So now, you know, so we can breathe a little bit and stop managing drama and just get to work.
Can I just say that I have a little different view. I do agree with most of what you've said, but I still think that the media has a long way to go.
Oh, for sure.
A huge way to go. Because, you know, there's two recent incidents we know, and we're planning to do something around this. We haven't quite figured it out yet. But the Rihanna, Chris Brown, okay? Now, we tend to feel that, you know, the whole you know, she was first of all victimized in this situation, and I'm not making any judgments, but I am. Yes, I am. Okay? And then to have her picture circulated around the world once again is a re-victimization in our, you know.
And then there are questions of, is she being a good role model to
all
young
of that,
girls?
all of that, you know. So, and then I just recently got an email from someone, and I didn't follow up on it, but apparently there was a very well-known media personality, entertainer, and, you know, who has a liquor that was doing a call for girls had to be light skinned. Okay, so there's still a lot of work to be done, I think, with the media. I know a couple years ago when we started, and some of our work came out of a group that we did, It's All About Me, where we looked at the media, and the girls were saying, listen, you know, we're not these people that you see, you know.
Well, actually, ladies, I'm sorry. We have to end this great conversation there.
But we have to challenge our media to be better.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And those of us girls in it.
And those of us who okay.
Sorry, ladies. Michaela, Angela Davis, Angela Hollis, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you very much.
And now we have Angelette Levert with some other news.
Thanks, Abby. And here's a roundup of other news happening in New York's immigrant and ethnic media. There's been an increase in Caribbean nationals becoming U.S. citizens in the past year, reports Carib World News. In 2008, about 130,000 Caribbean immigrants took the U.S. oath of citizenship. That is almost double from 2007's number of 68,000. Number one on the list was Cuba, followed closely by the Dominican Republic, and third was Jamaica. Another way to achieve U.S. citizenship is through enlisting in the Army as a translator. That's at least the route some Koreans are hoping to take, according to the Korean Times New York. In less than a month of posting the position, the Army has received 350 applicants, and of those, 1 in 3 are Korean. Once enlisted, recruits can apply for citizenship within the first 6 months of service. Plus, they would be eligible for education support and entitlement benefits. Language continues to be one of the barriers that prevent immigrant parents from participating in their children's education, reports the World Journal. In a report released by the nonprofit group Advocates for Children, they assert that although the Department of Education requires schools to provide parents with translation services, most do not. The group suggests that increased translation availability, including written materials, will disabuse the belief that immigrant parents are unconcerned about their children's education. The Philippines have something to celebrate. They recently made an entry into the Guinness Book of World Records with the largest march against illegal drugs, reports the Filipino Reporter. The numbers are still being counted as estimates range widely, all the way from 50,000 to 500,000. And finally, Israeli singer Ivry Lider's version of I Kissed a Girl led to an invitation to perform at Logo Channel's New Now Next award show, reports the Jewish Forward. Logo, a gay and lesbian themed network, says their show honors material that's ahead of the curve of pop culture. And that should put you ahead of the curve of what's happening in New York's immigrant and ethnic media. Back to you, Abby.
Thanks, Anjanette. From ethnic to mainstream media, there have been headlines about highly skilled immigrants returning to countries like India and China, countries that are weathering the economic downturn better than the U.S. The author of a recent study by Duke University contends that the U.S. faces a massive brain drain. But how extensive is this exodus in reality? Zyphus Lebrun sat down with Wall Street Journal editor Mitra Kalita for some clarification.
Mitra, thanks for joining us. Is there really this major exodus back to India from the United States of highly skilled Indian immigrants?
I wouldn't call it major yet. I think over the last few years, even before the recession began, we saw a trickling of Indians lured back to their home country by two factors. One was the fact that it was taking forever to get their green cards in the U.S., so there's been delays here, certainly. But the second factor was much more of the pull, which was that India's economy has been booming. Now, India's economy has certainly contracted not as sharply as the U.S., but is seeing the effects of the recession, but perhaps job loss is intensifying Indians who've been in America for the last few years to go over. But I don't think it's something that is quantifiable yet. And I also think that there is something about leaving America knowing you might never be able to work again in the country that keeps people in the U.S.
Right, of course. It's something like 50,000 over the last 5 years. And in regards to, looking at India's large population, that feels like almost like a drop in the bucket almost.
It is, except if you think about India's middle class and the elite are actually a smaller portion. So it's a country of 1 billion people, but 2/3 of them are in rural India, right? So you you begin shrinking the pool of white-collar workers, if you will, and people who are really the engines of multinational growth there. And IT sector, certainly the information technology boom, it's small in the sense that if you compare it to that 1 billion number, but it's a small enough community that 50,000 people going back makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Now, can India accommodate all these people who are returning at this point?
India certainly can accommodate them. The question is, because the economy there is also seeing a contraction, it's a factor of, what will they do? Will their roles be mostly management? India has had a major crisis as far as finding leaders for upper management. So in some ways, people are also taken with the idea of going to India because they can leapfrog in their careers, right? You can go right to the corner office. Will that create resentment from people who've been slogging for the last, 5-10 years and been part of the India growth story? Possibly, but India is also recognizing that in order to be a global player, it needs to draw from a global talent pool.
Absolutely. Now, what caliber of people are going back? Is it people in the IT sector? Is it doctors?
I think we're seeing a few sectors. So IT certainly, and that's a case where you really probably are seeing leapfrogging as far as people coming here to maybe punch code, learned, the way of American offices, the efficiency of American offices, leadership skills and so forth, and perhaps they're going back into sales jobs or, jobs where they'll be interfacing with Western clients and so forth. The other area is financial services. That is partly because of a provision in the stimulus package that prohibits companies that have received bailout money from hiring H-1s without displacing American workers. So that's leading to a lot of hesitancy in the financial services sector to hire Indian migrants afresh. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing, in financial services is another area that India was just sort of on the cusp of growing. I don't know if we're going to see the same level of investment banking activity that we once did, but certainly, with India's growing bankable population, you'll need that talent. And then doctors is an interesting point, just because healthcare in this country, in the U.S.,
right,
has added positions. I mean, it's the only sector that's been growing, but you're seeing a crisis in the industry as far as, you know, pharma companies are merging. R&D those budgets are being shrunk. Hospitals are starting to file for bankruptcy. The trickle-down effect I don't think we've seen yet, but anecdotally speaking, I have heard about some Indian doctors who might be seeing better opportunities in the Middle East, and then perhaps they're nearing retirement in the U.S., want to give back to their home countries and see India as a great way to do that.
Now, the fundamental thing here, Mitra, is why at a time when so many of the global economies are falling and are feeling the pinch, why is it that India is maintaining itself under what seems to be insurmountable circumstances?
Well, a key statistic is actually what I mentioned, that 2/3 of India's population is rural. That means that 2/3 of India's population didn't necessarily rely on you know, contracts from IBM or from Bank of America or to sort of make ends meet. And so, on the other hand, that population also saw a surge in its desire to consume over the last few years. They want televisions, they want mobile phones, they want diapers for their children. Now, it's not the level of consumption that some would argue sunk the U.S.,
right,
but it is a level of consumption that some could say is quite healthy for a country's economy, right? That you will still need these goods and services for this, you know, to really the bedrock of the country, the foundation of the country is rural. So I think the domestic demand is going to drive a lot of that growth.
But what too of perhaps the protectionist measures the Indian economy has, the Indian government has basically put on the economy.
Right.
Almost, if you will, you can compare the kind of protectionist policies that the U.S. government currently wants to put on Wall Street. What did that have to play? What role did that have to play in kind of helping the economy?
Well, it's interesting you bring this up because for the last few years, before the recession really hit, you know, the bottom that we're seeing, the financial sector in India really was pushing to open up markets, right, to sort of follow a lot of the Western models, but the government never really went that far with it. Its reforms were concentrated as far as letting in foreign investment, certainly, but also kind of cleaning up the system to bring some transparency into you know, the stock market and so forth. And so the risk taken by a lot of financial institutions compared to the U.S., it was nothing, you know. And so that's actually allowed a lot of them to be protected. The irony now is that after opening up, you know, private banking in India also boomed, but the bank that's doing the best right now is the State Bank of India. That's the government bank that was just very conservative in, you know, where it put its money. And now you've seen Indians, not only are you having that rural population suddenly open bank accounts for the first time, you're having people switch from the private banking back to government banking. So there's sort of this renewed faith in government after the economy has, you know, preached the need to open, right?
Okay, absolutely. Mitra, there's so much more that I would love to ask you, but unfortunately we're out of time. Mitra Kalita, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll take a break right now.
There is really only one boy. One girl. One tree. One forest. One deep, dancing ocean. One mountain calling. One handful of sand through our fingers. One endless sky overhead. And one simple way to care for it all. Please visit earthshare.org and learn how the world's leading environmental groups are working together under one name, EarthShare. One environment, one simple way to care for it.
It was only a few months after the September 11 attacks that Antoine Faisal launched Aramica. It was a gutsy thing for an Arab American to do in a climate of fear and financial uncertainty. But Faisal saw the newspaper as a way to build bridges, both inside and outside his community. Vianora Vinca filed this report.
Bay Ridge is the home of one of the oldest and largest Arab American communities in New York City, and where you'll find one of the largest Muslim concentrations in New York State. It is in this Brooklyn neighborhood that Lebanese-born Antoine Faisal launched Aramica. He published the first edition a few months after September 11th. Faisal wanted to create a community newspaper because he needed a job, he admits, after being one of the victims of the post-9/11 layoffs.
Being an Arab in New York after 9/11, in a bad economy, it wasn't very easy to get a job. The beginning was painful.
Painful, Faisal says, because his efforts to fight stereotypes by bridging the Arab American community with the rest of New Yorkers was not easy.
How would you create a bridge with someone who fears you, who reads in the post that, you know, beware of your neighbor, if he's Arab, if he has a beard, if he doesn't, if he's not too friendly to you, if he only pays by cash.
Challenges to keep Aramica alive came not only from outside the community, but from the inside as well.
After the newspaper started being read, and since it had English in it, many people thought that I was paid by the FBI or the CIA. That was one section. The other part were not very happy that I said, you know, you have Aramica. Aramica is the fusion of Arab and American, one word. And they were not very happy that I said that I'm an Arab. Some of them think they're Phoenicians, some of them think they're, whatever. But the fact that we were subjected to many rumors, it was a big challenge.
Oh, say, can you see?
This multicultural festival, organized by Antoine Faisal and the Arab American Association of New York, brought the Arab American community into one place to celebrate its people and 100 issues of Aramica.
He has been a very, very great help to the community. Thank you, Antoine. Please come in.
Since launch, the paper published exclusive interviews with leaders from the U.S. and the Arab world. Trying to be a publication for Arabs of all nations, Aramica maintains a non-sectarian content.
Right now, we pride ourselves that we are the only Arab American newspaper that is distributed inside mosques and churches, the only one that is allowed.
Yes, it's very good, and it is useful for Arabic people, for all nations here.
They discuss healthcare, education, new schools, and also some politics. A fair politics, not biased.
As mainstream media companies like Rupert Murdoch's News Corporation are increasingly looking to tap into new markets for more readers, many ethnic media outlets are being bought out. I asked Antoine Faisal if he'd ever be willing to give his paper up to a media giant.
Look, if it took me 4 or 5 years to get the trust of my community, me being an Arab American, I can't imagine someone who is not trying to enter this community. Especially someone like Rupert Murdoch. I would sell it, but he won't do good with it.
That's our show. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week. In the meantime, be independent-minded.